What is up, Steeler Nation? Welcome back to another episode of State of Wrong one. That's my Friday. That's my Saturday show. This is the Hangover. I'm with Shannon White. How's it going, Shannon? How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, and trying to get this new week started off with a great Monday and a hangover.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. And not a lot of news right now. It's kind of the the schedule's going to be released in a couple of weeks. But outside of that, not much news going on. I think the first thing that I think everybody's talking about right now is the news of Justin Tucker, Ravens kicker, longtime Ravens kicker, no longer a Raven, released with off the fields issues looming. What are your thoughts? What is your knee jerk reaction to the news of him being released by the Baltimore Ravens?
A shocker. I mean, he had a down year last year, but I mean, we're talking about the most accurate kicker in NFL history up till last year, and the longest field goal in NFL history. He has all the records. So I think they say it's just performance based, but it has something to do with the legal issues.
Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy situation. If you guys haven't seen it, go read it up. It's somewhat similar, I think, to like the Deshaun Watson situation and what he was going through as far as the allegations go.
Yeah.
So check. If you guys want to look into that, you guys can. Crazy situation that's unfolded over the offseason, and just let the legal system do its thing. You know what I'm saying? Do you think this is it for Justin Tucker? Do you think if he clears his name, he comes back, or do you think there's any chance for him to be a NFL kicker again?
Oh yeah, he'll play. Listen, Deshaun Watson signed the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history, fully guaranteed, after he was accused of even fewer counts. I mean, even more counts than Tucker was.
Yeah, that's true. That's a valid point.
And it sounds like they both have a similar what do you want to say, fetish or whatever. But so I think that if you got a guy that you get to the 40, you're in field goal range. I think he'll get another job. Yes.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the position makes a big difference. Deshaun Watson being a quarterback, Justin Tucker being a kicker might make a difference there. I know the Matt Ariza, they called him the punt god. He went through something with some allegations that ended up being unfounded. And in his situation, he went a full year. Even there was a year going on, and it's not like a punter is really moving on a moving train. You know what I'm saying? But throughout the middle of the year, I think it was like a couple of years ago, it got cleared up, but it waited until the end in the offseason for somebody to pick him up. I think he's with the Chiefs now, if I'm mistaken. But these guys will end up probably getting another opportunity. The other news that's, I guess, out there, not really related to the Steelers also, but kind of, is former first-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Devin Bush, got arrested, I believe, over the weekend. Simple assault and harassment charge out in near the city of Pittsburgh. Interesting that he came back. Not really news. This is what you get when it's this time of year. What do you think about the arrest of Devin Bush?
Well, it's funny, when we were talking about it before the show, you said that it probably he grabbed somebody, and I agree, because I'm sure he didn't hit nobody, because that he wouldn't hit nothing. He would not hit or tackle anyone, so he might have grabbed somebody and got arrested. Yes.
Yeah, Jared Devil comes in with his saying, "Beating around the bush." Hey,
so, beating around the bush. There you go.
There you go. That one's this is the kind of content you get, guys.
Exactly.
But now kind of transitioning to Steeler news, there was some rookie numbers that were dropped. We'll go through these one at a time. No surprise with Will Howard, number 18, quarterback. Real quick, I've gotten the question from a few people. Aaron Rodgers hasn't signed yet. Do you think there's a point where maybe the Steelers say, hey, we know we got Mason Rudolph. It's really not the first time they've promised him something and maybe pulled the rug out of underneath of him. But do you think there could be a possibility where they're like, hey, let's just give the keys to the Rook and see what he has?
I don't think they would give it to the Rook. I think they give it to Mason,
Hmm.
and then the Rook, he would move up to number 2. And so, but yeah, I think that there needs to come a point here that somebody says, okay, here's a hard deadline. Either you make a decision with this or we're going to go another direction. And because it's getting a little ridiculous. I've been tired talking about Rodgers. I'm beyond tired of talking about Rodgers.
Yeah, well, I think I was listening. I think it was Mike Florio or maybe one of these other guys that are in the mainstream. They're saying that they've heard basically it's a done deal. They're just waiting on when. I think the Steelers had reached out to Aaron Rodgers the week of the draft. I think that was well publicized and put out there. I think he gave him an answer. Now, why he's not out there, I don't know. I think I heard a recent podcast that he's walking around wearing a wedding ring now. And so if that ends up being the case, not sure if he got married or not. I theorized before all of this that he had made a statement on the Pat McAfee show that he's in a new relationship. He pulled up a dog, talked about some things, and I felt like there was probably like a trip planned or something in the midst of probably one of these training camps or mini camps that were coming up. And now that maybe perhaps that's over, maybe we'll see the signing. But if the Steelers end up with a married Aaron Rodgers, do you think that brings a different Aaron Rodgers?
Well, somebody asked me the other day if the Steelers could get Rodgers. He said he'd play for $10 million. Would I change the grade of the draft? We give it I give it a B+ draft grade, and I said I give it an A, easy A, when you consider that Metcalf is your second round pick. And somebody said, what would the grade be if you could sign Rodgers for, $10 million for 1 year? I said, well, that's an A+. If anybody could get Rodgers for $10 million, I think it would be worth it with as much as he might have left in the tank with the team he would have around him. Yeah, $10 million, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think if they do sign him, it's going to be for a lot more than $10 million.
I'd say at least 22.
Yeah.
He's going to be above Russell Wilson. Just like Russell Wilson had to go, 21, so that he could be $1 million higher than Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. It's all about semantics. It's all about optics. And
yes,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. The next number that was revealed is for Caleb Johnson, number 20. That's an interesting number. I thought he would have looked good in 22. I know the optics about it. Najee Harris was just number 22. And so I get it. I understand it. The last time a player left and another one came in right away, it's not really worked out, whether it was Kendrick Green coming in with number 53 or Calvin Austin coming in 19 his first year and being injured the very first year. So maybe that there's something to that. But what do you think about 20? How does that look for you? Do you think it's a solid number for Caleb Johnson? And then maybe go into how he, do you think he's going to get the majority of the rushing attempts, or is that something that Jaylen Warren's going to get for the first part of the year?
Well, was he number 2 in college?
He was number 2 in college.
Yeah. So I guess the 20 is the closest he can get because Steelers ain't going to give him 2.
No, that's Mason's.
Yeah. But I just think that if he is as good as I think he can be, the Steelers do not like to start rookies. We know this. You got to, there's usually got to be an injury or the guy's just freaking special. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say Zach Frazier special. So I hope he starts. Nothing against Warren, but I know Warren and what he can provide and what he is as a third down back and as a pass protector. You really want him out there in pass protection as well. That's not Johnson's strength yet. So I would love to see him start because if he's starting, that means he's special. Regardless, I think at some point this year he will become the starter because I think he's a better fit and that Warren has more value, as I said, as coming in and being the lead guy for a series or two, but getting a lot of third down work.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, if he comes out and starts early, that means he's special.
I do. Well, I'm not necessarily certain. I think he's going to come out and start early, but I think that he could be a guy that could get 55% of the snaps fairly early. In the season. Within the first 4 weeks. You know, Mike Tomlin is who Mike Tomlin is. Even when he had Le'Veon Bell and he had
Yep.
Williams, and both of them were playing very well, he kind of just stuck to one more than the other. I think that the fact that he split up the carries as much as he did was because of the ineffectiveness of Najee Harris in certain situations, whether it be obvious down and distances or whatever the case may be. He just was not getting the production on a per carry rush, and they had to bring in Jalen Warren quite a bit. But I don't think that's the way Mike Tomlin wants to run his offense. I don't know about that being also the way that Arthur Smith runs his offense either. I know he did some weird things with Bijan Robinson in Atlanta, and even with some of the personnel last year. However, when he was with Derrick Henry in Tennessee, that man got the bulk of the yard of the carries, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a transition back to more of a bell cow type of runner. And I think that Caleb Johnson has the physique and the running ability to be able to do all of those things. Pass catching, I think, is going to be one of the biggest question marks as well.
He didn't get a lot of opportunities at Iowa, but I think he can.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But I think he can. But to me, the backfield reminds you of Atlanta that Arthur Smith had, in that he had Robertson, and he had Algier. Now Robertson has more speed. It was more effective in the zone, outside zone, whereas Algier was more power and more quick hitting between the tackles. And in all honesty, that suits Warren better. Warren is that quick guy inside, and to me, he's the better. He's the Algier of that equation, whereas Johnson is the Robertson of the backfield. So I do think they're going to use both of them. I just think that Johnson will end up getting the majority of the carries as the lead back, just because of how effective he is. The more I watch him running outside zone for Iowa, I mean, he is really, really smooth. And I don't care what they said his 40 time was. When you see him get around the edge or get on the edge and accelerate, he's got speed. So I think he's going to be a good fit. And we know Warren can get outside too. It's just, he's a little bit shorter, has shorter strides. And I like how Johnson's going to fit this offense.
I do too. I'm excited about it. I think that the Steelers have some offensive weapons on the outside in DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Pat Freiermuth is another weapon that, should be able to catch the ball down the middle of the field. This should lighten up the box a little bit, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up being a guy that signs. He wants to put the ball in the air probably more often than not. And, that's going to have or give some running lanes and opportunities for the running backs. And the one thing I like about both Jalen Warren and this guy, as you mentioned, are both of their vision. And if they have a crease or they have an opening, they're going to find it. They're going to hit it and they're going to go.
Oh, yeah. And if you remember in Green Bay, Rodgers had Jones and Dillon.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And they ran the ball very effectively and often in his last year or last 2 years. And so I could see that as well,
Very true. Gavin comes in with a comment saying, I have a mild concern about the offensive line. Should we have kept Daniels? I just kind of wanted to look it up. He signed a 3-year deal, $24 million with the Miami Dolphins. It included a $6 million signing bonus and $10.735 million guaranteed. That's not the largest contract out there. What about you? Do you think maybe they should have kept him around? I know that they're excited about Mason McCormick, but, pass protection was a little bit of a concern for him at the end of last year. What are your thoughts about the interior offensive line?
Yeah, McCormick got thrown in there before they wanted to throw him in there. and he really fought hard, and he played admirably, considering where the level of college football he came from and everything he had to do. But it made total sense to me. The Steelers letting Daniels leave. I was a big Daniels fan. Everybody knows how excited I was when they signed him, and I've always been a big fan of James Daniels. But coming back from that Achilles, it's the same thing I say about TJ Watt in the soft tissue and the injuries that have started to pile up with age. Daniels is, still only 28, I think. He might be 29 when the season starts, but and offensive lineman can play later, obviously. But I would need to see a year of him, and that he still has the ability to push off and anchor and have that power with that injury. Because, I don't even know if he'll be 100% when the season kicks off. So the contract he got, I think, that was more of a risk that I would be willing to take with McCormick already in place. Fontaine, who can slide into guard if need be. There is options. So to me, I understand what they did. And as somebody said, Afton, that he will get us, hopefully, fingers crossed, a really good comp pick. So I think it makes sense for both parties.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. There was one thing I remember, and I've brought it up a couple of times, is that I went out to training camp the year that Kenny Pickett got drafted, and I think that was the year that they brought in James Daniels, and I was
Yes.
excited about him, because he was a guy that could play center, guy could play guard. He looked like a monster out there. And one of the things that I knew was that the Steelers like guards and interior offensive linemen that can pull, whether it be Alan Faneca, Marquise Pouncey of the world, even Kendrick Green. That's what they ended up drafting him for, and because of his ability to pull. And so I was expecting to see something out like that. And when I see James Daniels walking out on the field, he's walking like RoboCop because he has like braces on both knees and ankles and things. And this is before the Achilles injury. And I was like, man, that's I don't know how much pulling he's going to be doing. And so, the fit also was a question mark even for me back then. I think he was probably I thought he was a very well offensive player for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive line while he was there. But it was just I don't know. I mean, the fitment wasn't always just quite right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was you get him on the right line, surrounded by effective, intelligent players that know their responsibilities and they can grow together. So he just had a smorgasbord of players around him,
That's true.
and it affected him. And I wish him nothing but the best because I do think he's technically a very sound lineman. But I do think the Steelers made the right decision because to me the risk was too big to bring him back anywhere near the kind of money he got.
True story. True story. And we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take the break now. When we get back, we can get back into these rookie numbers. And we're going to also talk more about this offense. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after a few words from our sponsors. And we're back. Welcome back to the Hangover. Man, I'm all over the place. I almost called this to steelcurtainnetwork.com. Welcome back to the Hangover. Before we get back into the conversation, make sure you go to steelcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. You can go check out all our breaking news, up-to-the-minute coverage. If it's going to happen and it's going to break, you're going to find it there. So make sure you go and check it out. Before we get back into the conversation of the numbers, there are some people that are reporting that the Steelers are going to be playing the Vikings in Ireland on September 28th, not the Packers, contrary to popular belief. What do you think about the Steelers playing in Ireland, for one, and two, the opponent, the Minnesota Vikings, if that ends up being the case?
Did they say who that's considered a home game for?
It's going to be, I think, a home game for the Pittsburgh Steelers because they're the team that has 9 home games this year.
Okay, so yeah, that kind of sucks. I know they always do that for the one of the teams is the home team, and they usually give them 9 home games
Mm-hmm.
when that happens. But because there's no advantage once you get to both teams have to travel that far, and neither team has the home field advantage anymore. I think you'll
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of Steeler fans because there is a lot of Steeler fans. I've got family in Ireland. There's a lot of Steeler fans in Ireland, but I don't think that it's really what you'd say a home field advantage. But and playing the Vikings, we're not really sure for sure who the quarterback will be. I'm thinking it's going to be JJ.
Yeah.
McCready, but we'll see. But I know that there's a lot of very excited and Steeler fans in Ireland that are highly anticipating this game. So I think it's great for Ireland. I think it's great for the Steelers international fandom, and it's just going to build the brand, not just the NFL brand. It'll build the Steelers brand in Ireland even more. So I'm excited about that. But I don't feel like there's really going to be that much of a home field advantage.
I don't either. I wonder if it's hot out there, because the Steelers are going to wear black regardless, and if it's cool or warm. It's September. I don't know. I don't know the temperature out there. But I just hope that the Pittsburgh Steelers go out there before Friday, like they did back when they went to London. They took off on Friday before the game or something like that, or got there Friday before the game. And here recently, people have been talking about that trip, whether on certain podcasts, and how they were all exhausted during walkthrough and everything else because they got there so late in the week. The other team that they were playing, I believe it was the Vikings also, they got there like they spent the whole week out there in London, and they were there about 4 or 5 days before the Pittsburgh Steelers showed up. So as long as they do that, I think they'll be all right.
It's like, as you say, that you need to get there sooner to get acclimated because it ain't so much of the jet lag as it ain't that's a closer trip than some of the trips that these teams go on. But still, you got to get your sea legs, so to speak, or your the where you're over there and your focus. You got to get focused again because some of the guys it'll be their first time there. And and they're going to be excited to look around, sightsee, do different things. So I think getting there early would be wise. And so I don't think the temperature should be an issue that time of year in Ireland at all, hot or cold.
Yeah. September 28th. It's probably like what, week 4?
Week 3, I think it is.
Week 3. I'm
going to have play on Labor Day weekend anymore like we did when we were younger. You remember you always had that Labor Day, and now it's the week after.
That's right. So I'm going to have a very unpopular opinion or a prediction. I mean, an unpopular prediction, one that I hope is not true, but I think the Steelers end up getting an early bye because of this.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's true. It can happen. I hope not. I hate those early buys.
I do too. But we'll see. The schedule's coming out in a couple of weeks. How do you think the schedule makers have? How do you think they've had some trouble making this schedule with the uncertainty at the quarterback position? Because I think having Aaron Rodgers on the team makes a big difference, whether or not the schedule makers want to put a team on primetime or not. I mean, it's a big difference. It's Aaron Rodgers versus the Packers again, or Mason Rudolph. It's not the same story. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
And so, how do you think if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign before the schedule comes out, do you think there'll be an impact on that?
Oh yeah, because we seen last year. Was it the Jets? It was like every week we're scheduled to be a primetime game, and they sucked. And they were having to, they couldn't wait till towards the end of the year where they could change the schedule, and get some of these teams out of there that wasn't very good. So yeah, Rodgers taking this long, is not doing the schedule makers any favors, and I'm sure the NFL loves him for
Oh yeah, yeah, they're probably thanking him right now.
it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. You know, and I wonder if he signs before. You know, we'll never know. You know, we'll never know how it'll have an effect. I'm sure that if he signs after the fact and there's not very many primetime games, I guess we can kind of take an assumption there that they weren't sure, and so they didn't
Mhm.
put it out there. And I'm assuming that if it comes out that there's a lot of primetime games and Aaron Rodgers hasn't signed, that's probably a sign that the NFL thinks he is. So take that for what it is.
Yep.
All right, back to these rookie numbers. And I just realized that they're in numerical order. So this is not the order that they were drafted in, obviously, going Howard and then Johnson. The third player is Jack Sawyer, number 33 for an outside linebacker. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I would have liked the 50 number for him, you know, being an
Yeah.
outside guy. What do you think about 33?
I just think Merle Hodge. I mean, it just which was a guy I loved. I mean, they have a lot of similar fight and character. So I was a big Hodge fan. So, but yeah, it didn't seem right to me. I'm like 33. Is he going to play? Is he going to moonlight a little as a running back?
Right. Or maybe even a middle linebacker. I think 33 might pass a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah. Interesting number for Jack Sawyer.
Look good on the jersey though. It'll look good.
It'll look good. It will. It'll make him look like a running back, though. You're
Yep.
absolutely right. Dante Kent. This is the 7th round cornerback. I think he's going to be battling there for the slot corner position. Got number 34. You know, Richard Mendenhall, Terrell Edmonds' old number. I think this is actually a strong number for a slot corner. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought that um, there's always some duplicate numbers too.
Mm-hmm.
In the preseason,
That's
which
true.
can get very confusing. And so we might see 34 on more than one guy.
Yeah, I think there was 223s last year.
Yeah.
And I think it was DeMonte Casey obviously was one, and there was another. Maybe it was another position. I could be wrong about it. You know what?
It's usually an undrafted guy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was actually 225s, and there was another guy, and the announcer got confused at the end. Like, why is this guy still playing out here in the fourth quarter? And then he
Two-way
realized,
player, baby. Two-way player.
There it is. Carson Bruner, number 44. Didn't get dad's number, got a new number for him. Inside linebacker. It's a solid number.
Yeah, it's just it. It just seems like such a basic, hard-nosed number.
Yeah.
Let's do a little John Riggins, I mean, and that's the kind of guy Bruner is. So, yeah, I can see it.
Now, the next two, I really, really like. And I might end up getting one of these next two. The first one, number 78 for Yaya Black. I hope I said that right, or Yaya Black. Number 78. It kind of reminds me of when, like, Hargrave came out with the 79, Martavius Adams with the 70 number as well. 78 for Black out there. I like that number. It's a strong nose tackle number for me. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And I've said his thing. I said Yaya Black, why you Black? Because it's kind of sounds why you. So like why you Black?
Why there you go.
But I love the pick. I love the guy. He was one of PFF's highest rated college defenders against the run. I think he's going to be a great fit.
I do too. I like the number 78. And finally, first round pick, Derek Harmon, number 99, taking over for Larry Ogunjobi. I always like 99. Reminds me of, and given his size, he's going to look like Levon Kirkland out there wearing 99.
Exactly. That's who I thought of it instantly. But 99, I thought Kirkland. Yep.
Yeah. I like this one. I might end up getting this jersey here. I'm excited about Derek Harmon. I think both him and Y.A. Black, I think they're going to have a large role in the defensive line early. I think they did bring back Loudermilk, but they let go of Larry Ogunjobi. So there's a big hole there. And last year, the Steelers in the running game, it wasn't very well. They end
No.
up getting rushed for over almost 300 yards against the Baltimore Ravens. Uh, Now with a Derek Harmon and a YA Black in the middle, mixing in with Cam Hayward, I mean, the timeless wonder there. How is that going to have an effect on these outer edge guys that are typically getting chipped and or double teamed?
Yeah, they're gonna, if they do get chipped, you're taking a receiver, a tight end, let's say, or a running back out of the initial, you know, pass route. That's another option that's going to be delayed getting out. And with the pass rush that you have with your edge rushers, this Steelers defense, and the pass rush that these guys can provide, um, that just gives the Steelers more of a chance to get home. And last year where they got close a lot, this year hopefully they can complete some of them rushes, them pressures, and turn them into sacks.
Yeah. Yeah, they would definitely need to, I mean, I think last year, especially down the end of the season, defense kind of fizzled out a little bit. And I think a lot of it had to do with injuries and a lot of it had to do with fatigue and things of that
Yes,
nature.
yes.
So the offense is going to have to do their part to make sure that they can complement the defense. Is the offense still offensive? First and foremost, what did you mean by that when you came up with the title?
Well, when I think of defense, you think defend, you think defender, and the Steelers have long been known for their defense. And on offense, for it to complement, it has to, offense attack, put points on the scoreboard. And that's been a huge issue for the Steelers for a while now. Even with Kenny Pickett and they had their success, um, it was a time of possession offense. They kept the ball a good bit, which helped the defense and let them rest. But they were always playing with such a small margin of error because they couldn't put points on the scoreboard. They've been one of the lower scoring teams for the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time that they're not offensive, meaning like odorous. This offense stinks.
Yeah.
Now, are they actually going to be offensive as far as effective this year? And there's certain factors there. We have to finally, they've put draft picks, they've put time and money into this offensive line. The problem is they've kept all the same coaches. Now, you know how I felt in the offseason. I wanted to see some turnover there at the coaching staff. But
Yeah.
they feel like it's not a grammatical issue. It is a talent issue. And that they feel like on offense they need more talent and more time to gel. So that will start with the offensive line because everything starts with the offensive line. And it has to take a massive step forward this year.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can't do much without that offensive line. They're the backbone of the offense. They get everything going. They create the holes for the running game, protection wise for the quarterback, and yeah, there's a lot of complementary things that have to go back and forth in order for each side to be successful. Whether it's the the passing, or the rushing, and you become one dimensional like the Steelers did often last year, where they couldn't run the ball or they became predictable on certain downs and distance because of how far the down and distance was. It really, really took an effect on the offense. And so, this offensive line, as you mentioned, and there's concern there. Mason McCormick, he was thrown in there last year. We'll see now his sophomore year. Can he take that step forward? Broderick Jones, I hear, looks like he's a man on a mission. They've had their, I guess, what is it, OTAs now, and there's some pictures and stuff going out there. He looked good. George Pickens wasn't there though. No surprise. I mean, he's going through a contract thing. How far do you think that's going to go into? Do you think his absence is going to creep into training camp and in the preseason, or do you think he'll be on the sideline during training camp? How do you think this is going to play out?
Really can't even, when it comes to him, you never know what he's thinking. I thought I had an idea last year. I like, he had so much to play for and to stay focused and be that team guy and try to, uh, you know, avoid some of them tantrums and some of the stuff, the childish behavior that we've seen at times. And he couldn't help himself because I think if he'd had the season even that he could have had last year when Wilson was cooking and before everything fell apart late in the year when they played teams that were just a lot better than him, let's be honest. Um, I think that they would have really been wanting to give him a contract extension this offseason. But because they have no faith that he can be relied upon, they went the opposite direction and, not only give up a second round pick to get DK Metcalf, but they give him the biggest contract in Steeler history, for a wide receiver. So I think that Pickens could have been number one in line and they would have still been looking for another receiver, but I don't know if they would have went after somebody the caliber of Metcalf.
Any chance you see a contract being extended this offseason for Pickens?
I think it'll depend on as far as this offseason.
Yeah, before the start of 2025 year.
Yeah, I think it would have to be after the season. The Steelers still do not negotiate during the season, which I don't necessarily always agree with. But I think that if depending on how this year goes and how they feel they're set up for next year, I think they would try to offer him. But if he has a very good season, he'll want a long-term deal, obviously, and then he won't sign anything that, isn't in a certain percentage or certain range. So they would have to try to franchise tag him, which I think could be disastrous. So there's a lot of unanswered questions at this point.
Yes, there definitely is. I think in the end, I think he's going to end up playing for the Steelers this year. I think that whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, I think those guys can corral him. I think Aaron Rodgers commands just that kind of respect. And I don't think he's going to fall, I don't want to say a victim, but fall victim to, George maybe complaining to him to get him the ball. I don't think Aaron Rodgers cares who George Pickens thinks he is. He's got DK Metcalf. He's got other receivers and other options to throw to. And so with Mason, there was a lot of stuff that has come out about that 2023 season. And one of the things that has come out is the fact that during that Ravens game, well, George Pickens didn't even get a target. And one of the things that I've heard is that Mason went up to him and said, hey, that he was proud of him for being out there and being a team player and knowing the game plan was that he wasn't going to get the ball and still being out there and putting full effort and being that decoy, which is something that wasn't there last year. No, and so, if Mason can corral that, corral him in and corral that attitude, it could be a good thing. So I think that regardless if it's Mason Rudolph or if it's, Aaron Rodgers, I think they could be able to keep him in check. At least that's my hope. I hope at least.
Yeah, that's all we can do right now. This has been shaping up to be one of the most interesting seasons from the aspect of nobody really knows what to think. I mean, we last year were like, well, this team can make the playoffs if the quarterback situation, they find a little stability and they find some success early in the year because you knew they had to win those early games to have any chance because that last 4-game stretch was terrible. And luckily they had enough success that they stuck into playoffs, even with losing all them games at the end. But that's not how you want to go in the playoffs. But this year, it's more than just the quarterback. This offense, they have to establish an identity. Whether it's with the quarterback or in spite of the quarterback. They have to, the offensive line has to play better. They have to block better. They have a better fit in the backfield, which should help the running game. Establish the running game, play off the running game, play action pass, work the middle of the field, stuff that even last year didn't happen as much as it should have. And but it all comes down to those three: the offensive line, the backfield, and the receivers. And then you got to have the competent, at least competent game manager. So I have faith that a Rudolph could do that. But we've seen last year with Tennessee, there was a good game, and then there'd be a bad game. And and with the way things are right now, Tomlin has a quick hook. He pulls that trigger quick and gets him out of there if he starts getting frustrated. So this might be a developmental year, and we might see more of Howard than a lot of people are expecting.
Yeah, that's a possibility there. But points are going to be key. You spoke about the offense being offensive. Just to kind of give everybody an idea of what that means too is back in 2023, the Pittsburgh Steelers were averaging 17.9 points per game, which is odd because they allowed 19.1 points a game and still had a winning record. Last year they went up a little bit from 17.9 to 22.4. The opponents only scored 20.4 points a game. And so this time the Steelers outscored them. Although minor, they still outscored them per points per game. Where do the Steelers need to be this year for them to have a competent offense? Because it just hasn't seemed like that for the last few years. And 22.4 points a game don't sound like it's very like a big step forward from the 17.9, although I guess it kind of is, but it's not big enough. Where do they need to be this year?
Well, you got to take baby steps. I think that the goal, depending on quarterback, but the goal regardless should be 25. And if you could do that and play the solid defense that they are known for playing, now if any team could go up against a team like the Ravens that were just more physical and more talented, and they just overpowered the Steelers defense that at that point was injured and fatigued and just not up to snuff. They were not up to par against that Ravens offense. But I'm talking about the normal games that wasn't blowouts and they give up 300 yards rushing. So, this year I'd like to see if the offense could set that goal, a realistic goal of 25 points a game, average for the season. I think that would keep them competitive. If they're 22 or under like last year, I think it could be the first non-break-even season. We can't break even anymore. There ain't no 8-8. So I don't know if they'll be 9-8 if they can't fix this offense. They have to, because to me that's a sign that you're finishing drives with points and in your extended drives. The 3 and outs, as somebody mentioned earlier, that's killer. It's killer to your team effort to win the game, but it's also killer to your defense because they're out there too much.
Yeah, I agree. 3 and out city is not where you want to be at. And for the last few years, the Steelers offense, you can go back for several years in the first 3 quarters. I've struggled with that, going back even to Ben Roethlisberger. It took to the 4th quarter for him to turn it on and things to be turned on for whatever reason. And so this defense has been fatigued for a while. It could definitely use a much needed revamped offense and some points out there and some comfortable leads. I think we all would enjoy that.
I think last year, if I'm mistaken, and it's included the playoff game, was the first year that the Steelers, I can't remember, they didn't score a touchdown on their opening drive or they didn't score any points on their opening drive. I can't remember which one it was.
It was a touchdown.
Yeah. But not one time. All year did they score a touchdown on the opening drive.
Yeah.
And that's just unacceptable.
No, that is because there were some times where the I'd have to go back and pick them out, but I know that in the last 2 years there was some times where the Steelers defense got the ball for the offense in scoring position.
Yes,
and they still couldn't put it in.
No.
It's been a frustrating couple of years for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. I think last year we saw some flashes where it can be great. I think this year, hopefully, if the quarterback position can somewhat be answered, maybe they'll be a little bit more consistent. You got any final words for everybody there, Shannon, before we call it? Any last thoughts on things?
Just looking at this additions that the Steelers have made this year, including the guys that didn't get to play last year due to injury. There is hope that this is going to be quite a different roster. Some of these undrafted guys could push some guys off the team and make the roster. Castro, the safety out of Iowa, is a guy. Galbraith, the tight end from South Carolina State, maybe. I mean, there's a couple of guys there that, we know Castro. He's that hard-nosed safety, really intelligent, highbrow, instinctive player, and a tough, hard-nosed guy that the Steelers like. Like your Ryan Clarks and your guys like that, Chris Hope, and back in my day, Mike Wagner, guys of that nature. So I think they've got it could be a really exciting season. I hope people will let this team rebuild and will let this team grow and become a contender again and not be so caught up in that non-losing season. They got to make the playoffs. They got to, because, this year is, I think, especially depending on what happens with the quarterback situation, that's the first year that they're kind of going into the season where there's a good chance they don't make the playoffs this year. But they need a season to develop and define an identity, and I'm hoping that people will let them do that this year.
Yeah, they definitely do. And in the end, they also need to find themselves in a position to get themselves that quarterback of the future. Because I still think that they're aiming for that next year.
Yes.
I think that's the plan. Well, guys, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell if you haven't done so. If you're listening to this on one of the podcasts that's audio only, give us a 5-star, share the content. Don't forget about the website, stillcurrentnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. That being said, Shannon, take us out, my man.